Hearing for the 2014 revenue sources and add Valorem, I guess that word tax, but I'll open that up to Richard.
Good evening once again. Okay, this is, we talked about the revenue sources at our budget retreat in October. And every year, as you know, the city adopts an ordinance identifying the tax levy, and at the retreat we talked about optional sources of revenue as well, such as besides property tax levy increase, local transportation benefit district fees, and additional investment interest instruments. One of the things about the methodology that's used to come up with projected numbers for revenues, well, there's four, and I'll talk about those, but one thing I'd like you to understand is this is probably the most challenging part of any accountant's budget. We can use history, which we do, and we're conservative, we're taught to be, and that's part of GAAP. And of course, you look at economic indicators, and this year it's really hard to tell if they're going anywhere. But it's really something I don't like to admit, but it's kind of a guessing game. And it's what all of us, as accountants, finance directors, whatever, we're good with expenses because those we can control at some level, but revenues, you just don't know. And so for tonight's hearing, we talk about, the ad valorem tax revenue, and we're going to be passing that in a couple of weeks, on the 11th of November, 12th, I believe. And we talk about, I've talked with some council members about the challenge of understanding and projecting if that'll go up or down based on what the county tells us. Well, since that meeting I held, I've been speaking with the county, and I've gotten them to commit to, we'll at least see a $30,000 bump. So, because we did get an increase in our tax assessment for the city as a whole, and so I talked to the person who was my contact with King County's Department of Assessments, and I said, so if we have gone up in value, and you say we don't raise our taxes, and our tax rate is not at its limit, which is 2.10. Ours is in like the 1.64 area. And she had told me initially that we would not see any kind of bump in that. So I said, so where's it go? So she came back and said, yeah, actually you will. And so will the fire department in your area because of that. And I knew there had to be somewhere in there because the county doesn't get it all. And so she committed to, she said her estimates right now are $30,000. They don't have their final numbers to us. As soon as they do, then I can put that in the budget. But it was good to hear that. Otherwise, the methodology is basically look at last year, look at the year before, and then project. Conservative to me means the same or less. And then we can see how we come in, because it's better to be low than it is to be high in those areas because you banked on what your budget says. Right now, in the preliminary budget I have, most areas are down a little bit. So if you looked at the difference column, you see that they're in the negative area, so we can say that we were conservative going forward. Unless we have factual evidence, say permitting for a certain housing plat or something like that, or development. So is there any questions that anybody has about the information, other than how they come up with their numbers at King County? That's what I said, but now my contact's still there, and I'm working with her to get, they actually have a spreadsheet, but it's built with like these complicated formulas, and I'm thinking like, okay, now I need to sit down with her and have her show me how she built it so I can actually do it with the numbers they give us. So we're getting there. At least we have a number, and then we can work with that. Yes?
So your proposal is to leave the current tax rate flat, right?
Yes. Yeah, and the one question I had for King County was, well, if we don't raise it, then aren't we basically losing our ability to collect more, tax revenue? And that's when she said, let me look into it, and then came back and said, no, you are going to get an increase, because if the evaluation came in higher and we don't raise taxes, then we would be losing out, according to what I had understood from before. And after talking with her today, she helped me to understand a little bit better that that's not the case. And I didn't think it was, but I had to get clear on that. So I'm still working with them. It's still it's a challenge. It's always been a challenge to work with the county on this level, on this area. But at least they're more forthcoming than and I have everything in the report, so that's good. But yeah, that's right now, from what I see in the budget and what you'll see on Friday, I would say that that's a recommendation from staff.
Any other comments from council? No questions? With that, I'll open it up to public comment from the audience regarding this.
Exactly what is the heading, the topic? I don't have a copy of the agenda.
2014 revenue sources and ad valorem, I can't say.
Ad valorem.
Thank you, tax levy, property tax, whether we'll raise it or not. We have a public hearing on that open for public comment, and then we will be workshopping it at our next workshop.
Right.
Further discussion.
So to be clear, you're not proposing any raises in the taxes, the levy amount that's being made at this time, which is $1.64 per thousand?
Right.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Should I be really hyper-technical on that?
Yes.
No proposed increase in the rate.
In the,
Same rate would produce slight increase in the amount.
right.
There you go.
So, we're not discussing,
You come up to the podium if you have a question or a
okay.
comment, you come up to the podium. Thank you. We can't hear you on the, you know
right,
that.
gotcha. Well, so we're not discussing the allocations of the monies right now, only the ad valorem or not?
Correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other comments on this subject? You can come on up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please.
Gary Anderson, and I own a building down Valentine in the light industrial zoned area. This 50 by 120 foot metal building, and I have my tenants, been great tenants for years, but they've outgrown it and they're moving. So I ran my list on Craigslist for lease to find a new tenant, and I was inundated by many calls because apparently it's 502 compliant. They want to grow marijuana in it. So at first, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then I started, instead of just the first couple calls were stoners or people didn't sound too sharp to me, and I figured, oh, this is going to be a joke. I didn't know much about the whole vote. I know I voted against it, but so now I'm getting attorneys and mortgage brokers showing up wanting to lease the building.
So the public comment tonight at public hearing is regarding the property tax and raising.
Okay.
And so it's not really related to the 502 for tonight's hearing.
I've identified what I thought would be several new revenue sources for the city they might look into.
And that would be great for public comment on a different topic. This right here is a topic regarding the property tax levy that the city would, whether we would stay the same or impose a higher tax.
It's only that it's not any other new revenue sources?
Not at this meeting.
Oh, I
Not
thought
at
it
this
was.
hearing. Not at this hearing.
Because the public notice said it's to identify new revenue sources. Well, that's why I thought this would be the time to bring up all the fees and taxes you
I'm not
collect.
aware of that. This is strictly on the property tax.
Okay.
Sorry,
I
and I would love to hear
misunderstood.
your comments, and please do come back at public comment, and we will be having more hearings in the future. So we do have budget hearings that will be coming up.
Oh,
So,
okay.
thank you. Sorry. Any other comments regarding this topic?
As I recall, we backed last year.
Correct. And Rich could speak to that as well. He did look into that as well.
Right, we did bank it, and if we do the same issue, we have to do the same thing, and the ordinance has to clearly state out that we're banking it for future councils to make a decision whether or not to go ahead and use that.
Do we lose our bank from last year?
No.
We're looking at that. I'm sorry, we're looking up at the public notice.
Do you have a copy of that?
I got that.
Oh, good.
I'm sorry, you're right, and so, I'm sorry, you're welcome to come up and. You won!
I don't know if I won.
I'm really sorry about that, so.
That's okay. I thought I really blew it.
No, you didn't, I did.
Okay, let's see.
Striking out, good.
No, wow, a mayor who admits mistakes.
I'm sorry, continue, I'm really sorry about that.
Okay. Several of them have come up with numbers for what would be produced in just the one small building. And they figured over 10 pounds a week. Now, I didn't know what that meant and what the dollar amounts were to it, but it turns out to be over $1 million in 1 year revenue from sales from just the one building. So I had gotten the impression then that you would collect B&O taxes, you would collect taxes or fees for the inventory that they had on site, and also the assessments for personal property, equipment and furniture, equipment, lights and machines and stuff. And what else was it? Oh, the other thing that was surprising is the state's going to be monitoring it all, cameras inside and out, 24/7, and also state revenue agents will be on site or watching them on cameras 24 hours. They're all trying to track every single ounce to make sure they collect taxes on every bit of it. Everybody that would be of the company that would be in a building like that has to have background checks, criminal comprehensive background checks, fingerprinting, really controlled so you're not getting bad guys in the neighborhood. So I thought I would bring that up. I'm going to move on to a regular tenant if there isn't any way that you guys would come up with an idea to lift the moratorium, because that 30-day application starts November 18th and it's just 30 days and then it's closed. They won't issue any more. And specifically no retail. I wouldn't want that in my neighborhood, but in the light industrial area where this is at, the grow could be an opportunity for the city to collect a lot of taxes and fees and licensing and renewals and a bunch of money. That's all.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Any more comments? Yes.
On that, do we have the wording of our moratorium handy? I'm trying to remember where a wholesale means or grower operation is not aggressive regular should be moratorium.
I think I've had retail, there she is. Didn't it include?
My,
It included grow though, too.
the original ordinance, excuse me, that I drafted, tried to include that as well, and the actual ordinance was adopted, I believe, related only to medical cannabis, not recreational. So I think we should take a look at that. In fact, I was just pulled an article out of my purse that I meant to bring into work today.
The code says business licensing must comply with federal requirements, right?
Right. We do have the code, the City of Pacific code that does say that business licenses will not be issued for anything that is against city, state, or federal law.
Thank you for doing that, Paul. I appreciate that. Glad you're here. Okay. And thanks for bringing that up. All right. Any other questions from the audience? Second time passing. Any other questions from the audience? Comments? Final call for comments or questions from the audience. Okay. With that, the public hearing is closed. Thank you. Moving on to